First of all, can I welcome you all here today? My name is Michael Summers. I'm the president of the local chapter here of the Ireland-U.S. Council. And it's a great pleasure to be here today and to see you all again and to see what a large attendance that we have here today. We have a couple of excellent speakers who will address items of importance, both on this side and on the other side of the Atlantic. And shortly we'll hear from a man who operates, in fact, on both sides of the Atlantic, Dr. Gerald Farrell of Eli Lilly. And perhaps you would welcome Gerald Farrell here today. We're very pleased to have him. It's a great pleasure to invite our council member and supporter, Declan Carney of Aer Lingus, to introduce our first speaker.
It's a great honour to be here and to introduce our first speaker. It's, I think everyone is aware, it's a very special week for Ireland. We're celebrating a much improved relationship with our nearest neighbour to the east. But it's also very apt that at the end of the week, we're celebrating our special relationship with our best friends and neighbours to the west. It is in the context of that relationship between the two countries, it is a very, very special year for Aer Lingus. The bonds between the countries are growing, and certainly our investment in that relationship in terms of the size of our transatlantic business is also growing. I just come back from San Francisco, where we launched our inaugural flight last week, and I'm happy to say it's a very Irish town. Any of you who know it will not be surprised to hear that, but we received a remarkable welcome there. We were up at Silicon Valley. We met with many hundreds of Irish executives, actually, who are keen to travel on the flight, and the bonds between those Silicon Valley companies, as well as the city of San Francisco and Ireland, are immense. I believe there are 172 companies from the Silicon Valley area who have invested in Ireland at this stage, and that is growing. Please join me, ladies and gentlemen, in welcoming Dr. Gerald Farrell.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for this opportunity to address you here this afternoon in the Four Seasons. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you, Roddy, for the invitation. Standing here reminds me of a story I'd like to share with you. 4 years ago, I was addressing a similar group when a man approached me after my address. He thanked me for my presentation and asked me if he could show me a picture of his daughter. I was really wondering where this was going. Then he showed me a picture of his daughter and her baby. And he spoke quietly and he said to me, he said, "My daughter is alive today because of one of your medicines. She was close to death when the doctors gave her one of your medicines as a last resort, and it saved her life. She wouldn't be here today without it." It's not every day that you hear such a dramatic story, but it does demonstrate the unique role that the industry that I represent plays in society. It also shows behind every medicine there's actually a human story. So let me bring you back briefly, as you've already heard, that Lilly started as a company by a pharmaceutical chemist who was a veteran of the U.S. Civil War, so Eli Lilly actually was his name. He was frustrated by the poorly prepared, often ineffective medicines of his day, and he founded a company to develop safe medicines that were based on the best science of the time. That was 135 years ago in Indianapolis, and now Lilly is one of the top pharmaceutical companies with over, as you heard earlier, 38,000 employees with 125 in 125 countries. We have strong presence in Europe, and we've got R&D in the UK and manufacturing in Ireland, France, Italy, and Spain. And the impetus which drove Lilly to start the company is still with us today, and that's the development of new and safe medicines. We've nearly 8,000 employees engaged in research and development. We've doubled our annual R&D investments in Europe over the past 10 years to more than €450 million. Approximately 1/3 of our worldwide clinical trials are carried out in Europe, and an additional investment of nearly €125 million per year. So what about Lilly Ireland? We came to Ireland first in the 1970s, and since then Lilly has invested over $1 billion in the country and now employs over 700 people in both Cork, Sligo and Dublin. And all the locations are unique and serve different purposes. Kinsale is the centre of our development in Ireland, and operations have expanded greatly over the years, moving even further up the value chain. In 2006, we committed to making Kinsale our main centre of manufacturing and supply of active ingredients for our biopharmaceutical medicines. The complexity of the manufacturing process is really reflected in the calibre of employees in Kinsale, where over 25% of the 400 plus employees are PhDs. The facility is deeply embedded in the community and its surroundings, and it's worth 85 million euros to the local economy each year. I'm also pleased to say that we're currently recruiting, and the Minister's colleague Sean Sherlock visited the facility earlier this week to coincide with our current recruitment campaign, as we're hiring over 100 new staff. So this is high quality, well-paid jobs that drive the innovation economy. Elanco is our global animal health company and another division of Eli Lilly. The Sligo manufacturing site was first established in 1991, and the site manufactures a range of veterinary products, for both large and companion animals, mostly for the European market, and that currently employs over 150 people. It was originally part of the Pfizer Corporation, but we acquired it in 2010. Lilly put down further roots in Ireland 4 years ago when Cork was selected as a location of Lilly's European shared services. This was a major achievement for Ireland, considering the global competition from within the Lilly affiliates. The fact that Lilly already had a strong presence here in Ireland, I'm sure, gave us a competitive advantage. However, it's really important that Ireland is regarded as a country where industry can flourish, and that's critical for the boardrooms and the head office in the US. And certainly it helped, I think, bring this facility to Cork. The centre has gone from strength to strength, and last year won the accolade for the International Shared Services Centre of the Year 2013. And that there are 120 employees in that facility, and we're continuing to expand. So Lilly has a strong track record here for the past 40 years, but it's important that we will be here for the next 40 years. We're committed to providing high-level, well-paid jobs, and it's something that the Minister, I'm sure, would be keen on. It's been well documented that the industry here in Ireland is responsible for over 50% of the country's exports, and we employ 25,000 staff directly. However, the challenges facing companies such as Lilly, which have R&D at the core of the business, may not be so well known. As you know, we are facing a patent cliff where the blockbuster drugs come off patent and can be replaced by cheaper generic alternatives. Generic drugs do have a role to play in delivering effective, sustainable healthcare, but they're just part of the story. On average, it takes 1 billion euros and over 15 years to discover and develop a new medicine. For every marketed medicine that makes it enough money to pay for its development, about 25,000 chemical compounds are tested. On average, only 25 of these will get to clinical trials, and just 5 will get marketing approval. The time that a drug is on patent is the time when the company recoups its investment for both the successful and the failed molecules. So it's estimated that only 3 out of 10 marketed medicines produce revenues that match or exceed the R&D costs before the patent protection expires. And the medicines that do make it, 25% of their sales, on average, are ploughed back into development. So it's a highly intensive, cash-intensive industry. It's very important that we continue to bring new medicines to market, because the short time frame is essential that industry gets quick access to markets. And the government needs to help us and facilitate that quick access. Obviously, after 15 years on patent, medicines become generic. So these generics should be and are a lot less expensive. What is critical is that the pharmaceutical companies are given time to recoup their investment while on patent to ensure that there will be further innovation in the next cycle of medicines. So I suppose what the industry is looking for is fair pricing to ensure that the next wave of development comes, and that, of course, is critical for Ireland-U.S. Innovation is the future of our industry, and it's important that Ireland stays at the crest of the innovation wave by having highly paid staff developing the next range of super medicines. It's important that the industry and the government work together for the benefit of all society. The industry in Ireland needs certainty from the government. Patients need new medicines, and the government needs new highly paid quality jobs. So to conclude, we cannot assume that we'll always be in such a fortunate position in Ireland. We must look to the future. Decisions that are now made in the boardrooms in the US about where the next jobs and investments will be in the next 5 or 10 years are being made now, and Ireland needs to be in a position to be at the forefront of the consideration. You know, we've had some bad news in the industry over the last couple of years where some companies have closed their facilities, and we must ensure that this doesn't happen. On a personal level, I'd like and hope that Lilly will be successful and produce more and more new medicines that will make a difference to people and their quality of life, so that in the years to come I'll have more stories to share like the one I started with. Thank you for your patience and enjoy your lunch.
A great pleasure anyway for me to be here today and to introduce our next speaker, Derek Collins from the Bank of Ireland. He is going to introduce Minister Richard Bruton, who is here today. I know the Minister for very, very many years. I think I first met him when he was in the ESRI, and he was doing some work on the national debt, I think, at the time, which, of course, I was dealing with in the Department of Finance. And he went on to much better things anyway. So if I could call on Derek Collins from the Bank of Ireland to come up and introduce the Minister. Thank you.
President of the Ireland chapter of the US Council, Minister Bruton, Dr. Gerard Farrell, Council members and guests. On behalf of Bank of Ireland, I really would like to say how delighted we are to co-sponsor today's lunch. As I said, my name is Derek Collins, and I lead a dedicated team within the bank that is responsible for working with new international companies setting up in Ireland. But as I reflect on my role in FDI, what I'd like just to say is Ireland is a winning combination. Talent, track record, taxation and technology makes Ireland the destination of choice for foreign direct investments. However, Ireland's ability to punch well above its weight in terms of FDI is also due in no small part to the excellent work Minister Bruton and IDA do in selling Ireland's benefits on a very competitive global stage. And I would like to acknowledge this. In fact, last year, over 70% of new international companies setting up in Ireland chose to work with my team in Bank of Ireland, and most of these were US household names, and I'm delighted to have some of these guests with us today. Our work with these US investors is made all the easier thanks to the great work done by the Ireland-U.S. Council in promoting the links between Ireland and the US. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Minister Richard Bruton.
I never realised when I was studying all those years ago, as Michael reminds us, when I decided to invest my time in the studying of public debt, that I would get 2 economic crises out of my thesis. So it was an extraordinary achievement. They say there's 2 certainties in life, isn't there? Tax and debt, is it? Or is it tax and death? Well, can't remember. No, but I just want to say a few words. I mean, I suppose when we came into government, as you've said, I mean, we realised we were taking on a pretty difficult journey. But I suppose the model that we took on at the time was one that just wasn't fit for that journey that was necessary. The engine of enterprise was stalled. The spark of innovation was missing. The fuel of our talents, our many Irish talents, were misdirected. And that was a huge challenge for us. How were we going to turn an economy that had many strengths but had gone on a wrong turning onto a route that could bring it back? And I suppose what we came up with was our action plan for jobs, the concept of an action plan for jobs. And sitting down there, I just was trying to come up with, is it a mnemonic? To come up with three things that made a difference. One was accountability. The second was the partnership that we forged with enterprise, and the third was joined up thinking, which conveniently is APJ. If you're so that's the action plan for jobs. But I suppose what we sought to do was to have genuine accountability in our public service for the delivery on time and on target of changes that were necessary in our system. And I think that was something new for public service. Certainly in my 30 years, as you've reminded us, in politics, I've seen many a government and many a minister set out great ambitions. We've never been without ambition, but really what has been missing has been the willingness to hold people accountable when the ambition plan starts to go astray. And one of the things that's been unique about the Action Plan for Jobs is every quarter public servants from right across the government have to account for whether they've delivered on what was committed. And I think it has been a great discipline. The second thing, as I say, was partnership with enterprise. We very deliberately recognised that there was no solution to be found in Merrion Street as to how we were going to create enterprise innovation and exports. The solution was to be found from people who are out there on the ground. And we very consciously sought to make the process of an action plan for jobs an annual event with widespread consultation, public meetings held all around the country, and we brought into the heart of the process more than half a dozen industrial leaders themselves to help us to manage and implement change. I think that forging of a long-term partnership is really crucial in economic policy, and it's something that I think we've really benefited from. And it's good from both sides. It creates, I suppose, a drive and an honesty for public servants who are seeking to live up to an expectation that's created from outside, and it also great gains and understanding from enterprise leaders as to what the constraints in a public system are and how they can be overcome. So it's been a really good partnership that we've done. And the third piece was the joined up thinking. I mean, I have been around again for many years and read reports, say like the National Competitiveness Council, which looks every year at how do we rate on different indicators, prices of this and costs of that and ease of getting access to finance and the many other things. But often government is organised in silos, and there isn't a sense, okay, let's run across the silos and see how can we mutually collaborate to deliver something that will strengthen enterprise, build jobs, and make us, as the Taoiseach continually demands, the best small country in which to do business. And I think that joined up thinking across the silos of government has been a revelation and really a great help, because it has encouraged people of ambition who want to see change within the public service to front up and call for it and press for it and get coalitions behind the change that's necessary. So I really think that this as a process, not only for this crisis but indeed for any challenges, we need to adopt that. The other thing I'd have to say about this period of government, I suppose we're halfway through, is the patriotism of the public service to make the changes that were necessary to drive change in this environment is something that should be recognised. I mean, public servants are doing new things, they're working in different ways, and they're willing to be judged by success. And I think that is a real big step forward, and something that I think can enliven the public service, and really is something that deserves to be recognised as part of the transformation that we're undertaking. But I suppose the real heroes of the recovery are the enterprises and the workers in those enterprises that have gone out and used their ingenuity to confront the sort of of problems that have been the legacy of the collapse of the Tiger. And I've seen it in so many ways, going across the country. Stiefel in Sligo comes to mind. A company was going to be closed because it was no longer cost effective or in the right location, delivering a product to the standards that were expected in a competitive way, or whatever the test is. It completely transformed itself, went into a different business, and as a result it was rewarded to become a centre of excellence and within the same parent group for a new range of products. I mean, that transformation was something really exciting to behold, and it was led by the workforce on the plant, inspired leadership and great willingness to change. And there's so many other examples of enterprises going out to win new markets, to do different things, to transform what they're at. And I suppose that, it has been really encouraging to see last year, the first year where we saw real employment growth. Irish enterprise, both foreign and Irish owned, Irish enterprises operating from here, added 66,000 extra people at work. It was 4% growth in the private sector employment. There isn't another country in the OECD that has hit that level of performance. And it is a great testimony to the leadership of the many companies, as I say, both foreign owned and Irish owned. But while there are encouraging signs, and other of my former alma maters, the ESRI, I think, came out today and gave fresh evidence of the direction that things are heading. I think there's absolutely no room for complacency. As I said at our recent Ardèche, this is certainly not the time for businesses to go out and think that they can, jack up their prices at the first sign of consumers coming back into the market. It's not a time for huge wage demands that can't be justified by real productivity delivery. And nor is it the time for government to take the foot off the pedal of reform. And I think, again, the Competitiveness Council came out last week and they underlined that while we have made great progress, there are challenges and there are areas where we're slipping, and we need to be attentive to that. And one of my tasks is to make sure that, as the Taoiseach has committed to be the best small country by 2016, that we set out a real roadmap to deliver that. And that's one of the responsibilities that I have. And we have now, I believe, in the process of the Action Plan for Jobs, a genuine vehicle for delivering that sort of change. But I suppose the biggest bridge in those hours of greatest darkness for us, the biggest bridge that showed us the way how to rebuild an economy built on enterprise, innovation and exports, was the connection with the US economy. That was the bedrock in those early days as we tried to get a stuttering engine going again. It was the ability of the IDA to win new investors. It was the capacity of companies who had picked Ireland to, find within the talent in Ireland opportunities to be leaders within their group. And one of the really gratifying things that I find now, doing as I do many trade missions in the US, is that increasingly when you go in the door, it's not that you're explaining Ireland, it's people are welcoming you in and saying how the Irish division has become of such strategic importance within that parent company. That's something really exciting, and I suppose it came to very vividly home to roost when the recent Intel chip has written on it, and I have one stick up in my office, designed in Ireland. And I think that is a great testimony to how we have successfully built as a people, built up the talent, built up the flexibility, built up the ingenuity to make the sort of changes that allows company be a success. And I see Jim Brown there from NUIG, and many others have been partners in helping us to create that talent bank that is so different. And you mentioned the four things that the IDA commonly distinguish, but way out ahead now is talent. That is the key thing. We're living in a war for talent, and we have to arm ourselves to win that war. I think that's one of the things that we have learnt in this time. The other thing that I'd have to say about the presence of US companies, and again it was brought home to me by Eamon Sinnott when he was talking about Intel and its presence here. It employs probably about 5,000 people here, all found. But there's also 5,000 past pupils, if you like, of Intel working elsewhere in the economy. The talent that US multinationals have, not only by employing people, but by creating a modern environment of expectation, of ways of doing things, that has been of immense value as we have sought to transform our economy. And it's given us tremendous resilience, I think, in these difficult times. So I just, this is the first time I think I've addressed your council, and I'd like to thank Senator Catherine Noone for arranging the invitation. But we really appreciate the ties that we have built with the US and with the companies that are in the US, and we know that you're working to really challenging expectations from your parent companies, and it's our job to match that challenge and to have the flexibility to adapt and change. And we are trying to do things in new ways, whether it be with the Health Innovation Hub to plug into companies like Eli Lilly and many other smaller companies to say, how can we build bridges for better innovation from within Ireland that can become reference products and sales for companies to use elsewhere in the world. That's an ambition that we're seeking to forge for the future. Similarly, we're looking at how can Ireland become a centre for big data, which is transforming. You all know the way the explosion of information and its management is going to change the business models that succeed. I mean, even in the health area, it's all about monitoring and understanding the impact of drugs, keeping eyes on patients. It's not just about inventing the product. I think that whole explosion of data is an area where we can hope to lead, because we have the ICT companies, we have the big data centres, we have many of the skills, the analytic skills, and we need to build out that platform. So I think this is a time of great challenge, but also of great opportunity, and it's a great pleasure to be addressing you, especially in a year when Ireland had the opportunity last year to start the negotiations for the trade agreement between Ireland and the US. I think that's another horizon that we can hope to build for the future. I know that I think we're now in the 5th round of negotiations, and I think we will begin to see the landing zones, as they call it in the jargon, to emerge from those negotiations. I know that it is very time sensitive because we've a commission coming to an end, and I remember Mike Froman, when I first met him, he talked about this is a negotiation that would be completed on one tank of fuel. One tank of gas, as he would say himself. And we hope that, that tank maybe is getting down near into the red zone, but I think we will see that great progress will be made before the calendar year is out. And I think it is another opportunity, very much in the pharmaceutical, huge areas of opportunity, if we could streamline a lot of the regulatory side and simplify that on both sides of the Atlantic. And we could start to be standard setters for the rest of the world and make sure that we could lead in many important technologies. So there's great times of opportunity here, and I'd like to thank the Council for maintaining that strong link and providing a forum where we can exchange in an honest way both the good and the bad, the opportunities and the threats, and hopefully together confront them. So thanks very much.